Hey, hey. Thanks for joining me live on Wealthy Wellness Biz, where we are going through core biz principles. And today the topic is what's your plan for growth? So, if you were seeing this intro and you're not a part of our Wealthy Wellness Biz coaching group, I would love to invite you to grab the link down below and join us. So, after a little bit of an audio snafu, the first one, where so little bit of backstory, before I got on live, I dropped my microphone on the floor and, it looks like I unplugged something. So if you were there live, during my introduction and you didn't hear any sound, that's why. So now I can hear myself, and it was all good. It was just something got a little jingle jangled in the back. So, thanks for sticking here with me as we start over again. And it's just, I like to just kind of remind myself in these things, and hopefully you can feel this way as you're watching. It's okay to mess things up. I'm always like trying to remind myself to get out of the perfectionistic tendencies. And it's actually a really good lesson from what I was talking about, that nobody could hear me what I was saying. So I think any conversation about growth, about business growth, has got to start at a place of understanding that with growth comes attacks on your nervous system. So we don't get out of growing our business without some kind of disruption in the nervous system. It is very natural, and I like to kind of go back to this like concept in cell biology, that cells are either in you can think about them as either in the protective mode or in growth mode. And you can't be in both at the same time. You can't be in protective mode and in growth mode at the same time. And I think that there is some real wisdom there, or understanding, that we can grab for our own business and our own nervous system. So, what does that mean? Because it's kind of a little bit of maybe a little too what I'm trying to say, but I think about it this way. Our business kind of operates in the same way. You are either in protective mode in your business, or you're in growth mode. And sometimes this is just a psychic or energetic thing. Sometimes this is a subconscious thing. Sometimes it's within the nervous system. It's like, what is burnout? Like, what is the feeling of like, I don't want to go live because I don't want to expose myself to that many people. I don't want I'm in protective mode because what if I mess up? Great, case in point. I went live, I messed up, I had to start over again. No big deal. Like, and this is my own coaching for myself, is like, it's okay. It's okay to mess up. It's okay for the sound to not be working. It's okay to have to start over again. Like, but the reason why I can feel that way is because of the self-care practices and the self-coaching that comes into running a business and growing a business. Because as you continue to grow your business, you will hit this at every single level pretty predictably. So, like, the first level is like you're just starting out. So, you just start a business and you get your very first, I don't know, your very first subscriber. You get your first 100 people following you on Instagram or TikTok. You get people on your mailing list, and then that graduates you into your very first sales call, right? How much like, I can remember that, like, the first sales call, and how just, like, completely, like, I still get nervous on sales calls to this day. So it's just a recognition that before we even go into the principles of a growth plan, you need to recognize and accept the fact that there will be levels of nervous system taxing. There'll be levels of subconscious blocking that happens at every single level. From when you're just getting started to like where I'm at right now, which is multiple six figures and moving into the $1 million mark. And so at multiple six figures, the level of taxing on my nervous system is different from when I first got started. And in some ways, it's more difficult because now I'm managing a team. At any given time, we can have anywhere from like 15 to 20 clients. Each of those clients has their own needs and their own personality and their own um, challenges, just as an introvert to like be around, even though it's all online, to be with that many people every single day, every single week, that's taxing. And then there's like going live, doing this, running a membership group, going and doing sponsorships, teaching in front of a few hundred people, upwards of like 1,000 people. When I'm doing webinars and in our sponsorships, and even just the emotional and psychic taxingness of like running Facebook ads, right? Sometimes I look at those numbers and it's just like, it kind of wigs me out a little bit because like you are being exposed to like in any given day, it might be like, oh, this ad or this video was exposed to like 20,000 people, but they're like, I might not be in a room with them, but they're still like, they're still engaging with me and the brand, And so I just say this as like a way of connecting and saying that even once you get to the higher levels, especially if you're just getting started, it like there's this expectation that it gets easier at different levels, and it doesn't. We just need to make sure that our protective self-care practices are on point, that we have support, whether that's through like a coach or a mentor, that we have supportive partners, that we're able to like envision as we continue to grow, that we can envision a self-care practice that encourages relaxation of the nervous system, encourages like a life first mentality, like making sure that your life is um the life isn't just the business, and that the stress from the business isn't kind of coming into like every part of life. And your self-care practice is going to look very different than mine. Um and there are lots of resources online for meditations and sports and relaxation practices and going to the spa and putting on binaural beats or doing some yoga or walks in the park. There's lots of things that we can do to support ourselves from the standpoint of protecting our nervous system, because what we want is to make sure that, like, for me, that is like step number 1 in any growth plan, is protect yourself and take care of yourself. Because what we're asking of our nervous system, especially as a business owner, especially as like the CEO of the business, the face of the business, is that we're expecting our container to be able to expand in order to encompass more success and growth. This is where I'm going to segue into more of the practical. So hopefully you were there with me and you're kind of feeling it with like, yes, that for me, that is step number 1, is to like make sure that our foundation is really strong and make sure our relationship, self-care, time management game is really strong, because as you continue to grow, it will literally ask more and more and more of you. And if you don't have it to give, like, you will sabotage the heck out of this business. I can promise you that. It makes everything else that I'm about to talk about almost completely irrelevant if you are not creating the container to care for yourself, and you are not doing practices that allows your nervous system to expand into talking to more people, being, making more money, even like, what is the stats that they talk about with people who win the lottery and like still find themselves in this like, after a year or two, they're like back in the same financial set point that they were already at. So if you're not consciously doing the work to like expand your money mindset, to build containers into your relationship, and to build in like self-care and an actual life outside of your business, as you continue to grow, you will just find like the weight of the stress and the weight of the growth will be very it will put you into protective mode and you will stop growing. So you can do all of these things and say, I'm doing all of it and I'm not seeing the results that I want. You'll go back here, and often the thing that we need to work on the most, or the thing that's making the biggest impact, is our own relationship to growth. So, having said that, I just in good faith could not talk about a growth plan without addressing that. So, for the practical side, I want to give you kind of a down and dirty like growth plan and some things to think about. What are the 5 things that I think that you need to have in place and you need to focus on regularly in order to grow? And then just a quick kind of down and dirty, like what are some things to think about in terms of um, growth in general, growth experiments, I guess I would say. So it's good to kind of define what we mean by growth, because growth is not necessarily revenue, although revenue is a huge part of it. We also have, in terms of things that you can grow in your business, we've got revenue, we've got clients. That's the number of clients. So the number of new clients. We've got client retention. Um, and that's the number of clients that decide to stay on with you for your move up in the ascension into a better offer, or they decide to stay with you kind of long term because you've created some recurring revenue streams in your business, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can also grow things like your website traffic, your blog traffic. You can improve statistics on how long people stay on your website. Um, we also have things like email list numbers, how many email subscribers, how even things like open rates and click-through rates. You can go from like a 10% email open rate, and then through intelligent practices, like scale that up to like a 30 or a 40% open rate. We have social media growth, which can encompass like more followers just in general, but like more likes and shares and saves. And then we have paid advertising too. So how are we growing the ability for our ads to kind of work? How are we growing like the scalability of them, the amount of dollars or cents that we're putting into our ads, and the results that we're getting? And that's not everything. I mean, there's lots of other things, but revenue, client number, client retention, website traffic, blog traffic, email list, numbers, subscribers, opens, etc. Social media, paid ads. If you have a podcast, I'm going to write that down. I always have my handy clipboard with me here. So there's lots of things we can actually track and grow throughout the year, the quarters, and I'm going to circle back towards the end and just talk about just some best practices in terms of growing those. But I want to set out a framework for you, which in my mind is like the best way for business growth, is to make sure that you are tracking and really conscious of all of these 5 things. So number 1 is, this is really like a crash course, like a business crash course here. Number 1 is lead generation. We want to make sure, like, you have no business if you don't have a steady stream of leads. We want to make sure that every day, ideally every day, but maybe at this point it's every week or even every month if you're really just getting started. The ideal is every day that we have a steady stream of new, fresh people coming in. Now, there's lots of ways of doing that. So, if you know anything about funnels, or if you've heard this word funnel, the funnel is really just the journey that somebody takes to uh, get to know you and your business. That what takes them from like cold traffic, somebody who doesn't know you, and moves them into eventually being somebody who buys with you, and then eventually somebody who buys with you multiple times, either through a recurring service or just moving through the ascension plan of your business. So we need a steady stream of leads, and there's lots of ways to dump people into that. So if you think at the top of the funnel, there's lots of ways to dump people in there. So that could be social media, that could be paid ads, that could be sponsorships, or that could be having a podcast, that could be talking on somebody else's podcast or going on their summit or their webinar, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of ways to bring people in, and this is what you sometimes hear as a marketing plan, and the marketing plan often is how do we expose ourselves to new people? How do we dump new people into the top of the funnel? How do we get them into our ecosystem, going down the rabbit hole, learning about our business? There's lots and lots of ways of doing that. But that's my number one. We need a fresh, steady stream of leads every single day. And in the beginning, no, I'm going to take that back. Always, we want to be testing out different ways of getting people in, of getting new leads in. Number two is audience development and relationship building. So once we have those leads, so we've got number one, a steady stream of leads, people coming in, we want to do a great job of developing an audience and relationship building. And these are what's the difference between audience development and relationship building? They're kind of the same thing, but I like to think about this as being like almost two separate tracks here, where number one track is so if number one is the leads coming in, and number two is like kind of 2.1 and 2.2. 2.1 is how do leads become an audience? And an audience is actually people who are paying attention. They're people who are following along. So they may not have bought anything with you at this point, but they open your emails. They show up to your live show. They listen to your podcast. They haven't become a buyer yet, but they're not completely cold traffic. So we take that audience and we, 2.2, develop a relationship with them, which means that we show up consistently. We show up ready to help, ready to share our personality, rather ready to share about our business, ready to provide value. This is where your content comes in. This is where your podcast and your mailing list and your social media, this is the purpose of having all of those things. We have lead generation, which is its own set of tactics and tasks that bring new people in. But we have to do so. This is where this step, this audience development and the relationship building, is where I see a lot of business owners who aren't growing. It's where I see them falling flat because they think it's enough. It's that like if you build it, they will come kind of mentality, which doesn't really work. Just because you get a lead into your ecosystem doesn't mean that that lead is. Most people are not ready to be a buyer at that point. And it's just really good to know that and really good to just like understand that people aren't ready to buy at that point. So what we need to do is create a reason to develop a relationship with them, create a workflow where every week we're writing to our mailing list in the purpose of developing that relationship of turning a cold lead, someone who's just like, I'm curious, I'm going to grab this lead magnet, or I'm going to subscribe, or I'm going to listen to this show. What is the hook to kind of bring them in? Like, and every week, what are you doing? What are your, 1 to 3 things that you're doing every week to further that relationship? So that could be your social media channels, that could be your mailing list, that could be a live show that you do, a blog that you write. What is the regular content that goes out to continue to build the relationship? Now, something that we'll do in later parts of our core principles series is we'll talk more about audience development and figuring out your avatar and your niche. So at this point, I would say like you don't focus so much on that. Just get down these core principles of business growth. Because once you like this number two, audience development, relationship building becomes a lot easier when you're like really clear on who your person is and who the person is that you're trying to talk to. Because then you can figure out like, and you can test the best content, what really pushes the needle forward with the content that you create. So moving on, number 3 that we need in our outline for business growth is an offer ladder. And what I mean by that is you need to have multiple tiers of offers. Now, I say you need, like, please take that gently. I'm not telling you anything that you have to do in your business, but the businesses that are successful tend to have or trend to have multiple offers at different price points. You might hear this called an ascension ladder. And that's basically somebody who is cold traffic warming up and then buying at different levels. And this recognizes the fact that not everybody, there are so different types of buyers. Some people go straight for the most expensive thing. They're just like, I can just cut out the crap of the other layers of this ladder, other steps of this ladder, and I'm just going to go straight to the thing that I want, which is like the top echelon, that top tier. If I was to work backwards from like a pyramid where the top, the little bit of the top of the pyramid, that should be your one-to-one VIP services if you offer any one-to-one. So if you're a functional medicine, health coach, something like that, that top of the pyramid is going to be your one-to-one services that you do. And that allows you, those should be your most highly priced, most coveted VIP uh, spots right there, and they should be priced accordingly, that in order for you to like have a comfortable month, have a comfortable life, um, you only need to sell like anywhere from like 3 to 5 of those every month. I mean, ideally, if you only have to sell 1 to 2, but you might not be at a confidence level to sell at that price point, and that's okay. You know, you can kind of stair step, but like if you could sell 1 package a week with good systems in place, that shouldn't be that hard. You know, book yourself 4 sales calls and close 1 out of 4. What is a price point that you'd have to sell something in order to live comfortably and only sell 1 of those a week? Right? So you can start to do the math and say, if I sold 4 of these packages every month, what would that look like for me financially? And work backwards, you know, have a goal of how much you would like to make or how much you need to make. So I say this lightly because this is really dependent on where you're at in business. So you might be just starting out and you have like a 9 to 5 job, or you have like some kind of side hustle that's paying the bills, and the business hasn't really taken over to pay the bills yet. So I know that this is a stair step, but I'm offering a framework of, if you were able to sell 1 thing a week, which is not a big goal, and you sold 4 in a month, what would they need to be priced at? If your goal is $20,000 months gross, then you know what you need to price those at, like a $5,000 package, sell 4 of them in a month and hit your goal, you know? So then we kind of work back and we, well, how do we get ourselves 4 sales calls so that I can like be comfortable with a 25% sales rate? And that's where you're going to go into your lead generation. You're going back to number 1 and number 2, lead generation and audience development. If you were out there making offers every single week, and this can be in a sophisticated way, it doesn't have to be like, yo, buy my stuff. It's just like, how is it peppered into your calls to action in your podcast? Do you have funnels in place that are like effortlessly kind of bringing people through your lead magnet? It invites people to get on a discovery call. And we're going to go like in future series, we'll talk about more of the sales process, but like we're still within the framework here. So if you have an offer ladder, the top tier is your one-to-one services. And then you can build out the rest of the pyramid with offers that are a little more low ticket, a little less time intensive for you, except for setting it up the first way. A little more scalable, right? So you've got your top tier of the pyramid, but then like the section underneath would be maybe like $500, $1,000, $2,000 online program or a group program that people can scale into. And then that bottom part of the pyramid, kind of the biggest piece, is like your low hanging fruit offer. So this is something that's priced at like $27, $47, $97. It's like kind of that no brainer first step for people to take, where they get to just explore a little bit of your ecosystem, kind of like peel back the curtain and see the way that you work and the way that you express yourself, because this is all about relationship building. And they're trying to get a peek and see whether they like you or not, and whether you're worth investing more money in. So we have this offer ladder that takes people from the audience who are not buyers. So they go from leads to audience to getting on a low rung of the ladder, which leads me to number 4. So we get people onto the offer ladder at some level. The bottom part of the ladder is a low hanging fruit offer. Middle tier is something that's, f ask them to put some more skin in the game, but is scalable, so whether that's a group program or whether it's a DIY kind of program, and then the top tier, the most expensive, is one-to-one services. They're priced at a way where if you sold 1 per week, that's it, you would have a comfortable month. Okay, so that would be my down and dirty, how to create an offer ladder. And now, number 4 is about creating one more thing in that offer ladder. And you might not be at this stage right now. So part of this is just maybe a plan for the future. You might just be at the stage where you're trying to get together lead generation, put in some marketing plan in place, audience development. So creating your regular content and your regular relationship building, and then getting your offers in place and your sales process in place for how to sell those offers. So I would say number 4 and number 5, you might be at a place where you're not ready for these yet, but it's good to know that these are the 4th and 5th steps in this profit plan, in this growth plan. So number 4 is around client retention and having a referral machine. So once you have a steady stream of clients coming in, either through your low ticket offer, that mid-tier, group program, or the top tier with just your one-to-one kind of VIP services, we need to develop a way to retain those clients, because a client who has had great results with us, who's already gone through the sales process, is much more likely to say yes to further offers than somebody who's brand new. So if we can find a way to retain our clients either through a membership or some kind of recurring, um, even if it's a one-to-one offer, or some kind of one-to-one coaching, or it depends what you would slot into this spot is really business dependent, but it's also dependent on your, like, how much time you wanna put into it, how much you like one-on-one work. You might go for something that's a little bit more of like a low cost membership every month so that people can just kind of stay in your ecosystem, but you don't have to do a lot of the one-to-one work. You maybe love one-to-one and you wanna keep people on retained on, like, a monthly coaching thing too. So both of those are available. So we wanna have a plan for client retention, and we want to have a way to develop our clients into our biggest cheerleaders, our biggest referrals. So how to leverage our relationships and leverage the transformation that we get with clients to turn that into referrals. And we can dig into every single one of these way deeper. So I want to get the spirit of the framework just down for you. Number 5 is to develop and continuously develop your team. So, some of the first part of this framework can be done just yourself. As you continue to grow, you will need more support. You will need support just inside in your own nervous system. So your dream team might consist of massage therapist or an actual therapist or somebody to help you clean your house. There is your dream team doesn't just have to be part of the business. It can be your support team too. But within your dream team, you can go back. We have a whole series on developing your dream team and your organizational chart that I'd like to refer you back to. It's in the membership site. Um, Head over there, especially if you're really needing the support, and get a good sense of who is the first, who needs to be on your team to help you get good results here and grow the business. So I'm just going to recap those 5 core principles of business growth. Number 1 is lead generation, steady stream of new people. A business needs fresh leads, ideally every day. Number 2 is audience development and relationship building. So this is where we're going to leverage your content, your core content pieces, those flagship pieces of content. We use a podcast in our business as our core piece of content that then gets sent out to the mailing list on social media. We blog about it. So you need some core content that you're creating every single week in order with the purpose of developing your relationships with the people who are in your audience. And your audience members means people who are there, who are actually paying attention to you. Number 3 is having an offer ladder. So that is an ascension plan, an ascension ladder for people to some people will wanna jump on at the low ticket, some people wanna jump on the medium, some people at the high top of the pyramid, and we need processes in place to kind of graduate them to the next step. Number 4, we need a client retention plan. Once people have said yes to us, how do we keep them on as clients? We can either do this at more of a lower cost membership, or we could keep them on as a one-to-one client. And we need a plan to turn clients into our best referral sources. And then number 5 is continuously developing our dream team. And that could be people within our actual team, or it could be also include our support people that help us keep a strong nervous system, that help keep us strong and healthy and excited and enthusiastic about our business. And the best way to stay healthy and enthusiastic about your business is to stop doing the parts of the business that you really don't like. It kind of comes down to that. The more that you can create an energetic exchange where you are paying somebody to take off of your plate the parts that you don't like, and you continuously refine until what's left in your week, in your day is the things that for the most part light you up. You will find you have so much more enthusiasm for that business and you will be excited about actually growing it. Having said those 5, I just wanna wrap up with a little bit of, a workflow or a plan, maybe, changing kind of a paradigm shift here. I want you to think about because we went through these 5 steps, core principles for business growth, but I also want you to, like, approach business growth, whether it's every month or quarter or probably not every year, but maybe every year depending on how you're planning things. I want you to leave a little bit of leeway or a little bit of like flexibility in your energy around experimenting. So part of business growth is a necessary part of business growth is experimenting. And in order to experiment, you need to be prepared for things to not work like you expected, or prepared to be surprised by the things that you didn't think were going to work, but actually did. Um, so I want to walk you with that in mind, just kind of walk you through like a mini workflow of how to test things in your business. So what I'd like to see you doing, at least on a quarterly basis, is to set some experimental goals, create some like you were doing. You know, we started off this conversation talking about cell biology, and I'm going to bring it back to the scientific method. Um, and so this is kind of set out a little bit scientifically, but like I want you to start off the quarter or even every month with some goals for things to test. And you can pull from that list of like, are we testing revenue, client number, client retention, website and blog traffic, email list numbers and email list open rates and click rates, social media, paid ads, podcasts slash content creation. You can pick from anything in that list to start testing. You know, we can start testing, hey, if we do this, if we do A, um, do we see an increase on podcast subscribers or how many reviews we're getting on our podcast? So number 1 is to set goals. So kind of pick from that list of different variables that you can test out. Um, Identify your inputs and your outputs. So identify what are the inputs that you're going to test out. Like, so if I was to just grab one at random, podcast is right here on the last of my list. So we might test some inputs of change. What if we swap out the calls to action? What if we test um, different topics, right? Like which topics are getting us more discovery calls or getting people to follow more of the calls to action. Some other inputs could be like, oh, we're going to test out having an interview show versus just a solo show. So we're going to test like, how do our interviews do over the period of a quarter? How do our interviews basically stack up against our solo show? So you're identifying your inputs and your outputs. Your inputs are the variables that we're going to test out. So some of the things we're going to change. Email list. Let's take another one. There are so many experiments out there that you can run. we're going to try out our email list with different A/B test some different subject lines. Do people open it if we just call it new podcast episode? Or do they open it more if we have like a catchy hook, but it doesn't necessarily tell them it's a new podcast episode? What about if we um, send it on a Thursday versus a Monday? What about different times a day? So you can start to see the spirit of like, define some experiments every quarter or every month that you're going to test out. Define what those variables are that you're going to test. And what the outputs that you're looking for. So that would be for podcasts, it would be like we could run an experiment of solo versus interview shows. And the output is, do we get more discovery calls booked from one versus the other? Or we're going to run different content experiments with podcasting. Do people engage more if it's about business growth, or is it about marketing, or is it about podcasting? So, identify your inputs and outputs, then run growth experiments. It's as simple as A/B testing different things. It's as simple as just sometimes it's defining the experiment and saying, well, how will we track this at the end? Okay, well, we are going to test out um, posting on TikTok 2 times a day. And in a month, we're going to see how we did. We're looking for growth. We're looking for likes. We're looking for shares. We're looking for followers. Define the parameters of the experiment, run growth experiments, and then validate your experiments. And the things that win in your experiment can become part of your regular plan, part of your regular growth plan. Now, I would just say, if you're by yourself or you're a small team, running experiments can feel like really like, oh my God, I don't even have the time to like do hardly anything in the business, let alone actually like be running experiments too. But I would say it is too important to not dig in here, because it's when you can validate, when you can experiment, when you can approach growth like an experiment of like, we don't know what's going to happen here. We have no idea. You can follow all of the best business advice, but like until you actually start going in and you start testing things, and until you start tracking things and running these experiments, it's going to be really hard to validate and quantify what's actually working in your business. So I'm going to leave you with that piece of advice. We've got the 5 core principles to business growth: lead generation, audience development, having an offer ladder, client retention and referrals, and developing your dream team, both within and without the business, outside of the business. And then the other thing that I'm going to leave you with is an inspiration to every quarter or every month set a series of, 1 to 2 experiments that you're running at a time. Grab it from that list of revenue, client number, client retention, website traffic or blog traffic, email list numbers, social media, paid ads, podcast or content. Grab something that feels exciting within that group. Start running a couple experiments, track everything that you're doing, and make educated guesses at the end. Validate the data. If you keep moving like that in just very systematically, just commit it to experimenting, you will find growth success there, because you're not just throwing spaghetti at a wall. But to start off with, we may have to do that, right? But if you just are throwing spaghetti at a wall, please make sure that you're testing it at the same time. Please make sure that you're able to say, hey, we tried, we read about a couple different things. We're still doing it years into the business. Like, oh, we've never used a chat bot before. What would it be like? Or we haven't started a TikTok channel, or we haven't, what about our podcast? Like, we're always experimenting. And I think approaching it from a spirit of experimentation and collecting data and validating the data, like even if you're like, I'm not a science person or I'm not a math person, it can just add so much to your bottom line when you're actually able to see the parts that are working. So having said that, I know today was a big live class, some big core principles here. I am so excited that we're going through this series. I can't wait to see you next week, which I believe we are going through either client avatars or building a niche or something like that. If you're watching live, thank you so much for being here with me. If you're not watching live and you're watching the replay, so happy to have you here in the community. And I will see you next week.